Welcome to Prepper Nation. I'm John. Thank you very much for watching this morning, for listening, whatever, however you consume this video. It's very much appreciated. Thank you for shooting a thumbs up. That helps other people find the channel. We deal with mad censorship over here in case you're new, and consider hitting subscribe if you've not done so already. Sharon T, thank you very much this morning, not for the mean bean, but for the hot cocoa. My wife got this new coffee making deal, the carried cup. She got hot cocoa, she's got teas in there, but I digress. Goodbye, freedom. That's what we're talking about this morning. And a shout out to JDP over on Patreon for sending me this intel and said, hey, maybe we should talk about this, send a link and everything. So we're going to talk about it this morning. It's taking place right now in Europe. But if you've been here on the channel for a while, you know that I'm a firm believer what's taking place in Europe eventually makes its way across the pond here to Canada and the United States. Okay. So they're dealing with right now, it's called EID, stands for European Digital Identity. And I ran a poll on Patreon yesterday and also a poll on the Coffee Club. The results of those polls should be pinned at the top of the live chat. But what this is essentially, the idea of this thing came up at the beginning of the pandemic when they were trying to prove, does this person have the whiskey shot? Did this person say, nah, son, I'm good? Which I said, nah, son, I'm good. But I digress. The point is, the idea popped up right about then, and they've been on it, and they're creating this digital wallet, which is, it's kind of the term really doesn't fit because when you hear digital wallet, you think it's just money, it's just currency they're talking about, but they've taken it way beyond just money, as we're going to discuss this morning. Basically, this thing is your entire existence in a snapshot. You know those QR codes where you can scan the code and it pulls up all this information at one time? It's basically a digital QR code. That's what Europeans are going to become. And eventually, here in the United States, your life will be put into a little bitty box, a QR code, or something similar to the EID system. It's everything. How many kids you have, where you live, blah, blah, blah. But listen, here's some of the stuff this EID is going to contain: digital driver's license, and if it makes its way here eventually, your social security card and all of this stuff. Health identification, which is getting back into the whiskey shot and all of this, and also your health record, your ID, all the information that your doctor typically has under lock and key, all of your banking information, all of it, all of the cards, all of it. If you have a Visa, if you have a MasterCard, if you bank at Wells Fargo, it's going to have all of that. What could go wrong, right? All of your credit information, every last bit of it is going to be in within the confines of this EID. Your social media credentials. What platforms are you on? So, in other words, when this thing launches over there, I know it sounds crazy for us here in the United States, but let's say they're on Facebook, okay? In order to use Facebook moving forward, once this thing launches, and they've already approved it, there's some safeguards in place, but they've already approved this thing. It's a done deal. And so when they use Facebook, they're going to have to use their digital ID to log in. So we know, hey, who is this troll, son? There's no more hiding behind screen names and all of this stuff. They're going to know exactly who's using the internet, exactly who's leaving what comments. This is not just going to be Facebook. This is going to be all social media. Okay. Travel documents, passports, and things. Getting back into the whiskey shot and the vax passports and stuff that we were called conspiracy theorists for pointing to a couple of years ago. Now they're becoming a reality. Opponents of this idea, this concept in Europe, and I would tend to agree with this, have called this China's social credit system 2.0. Remember, if you will. Get those brains churning for a second, son. Remember a year, maybe a year and a half ago, I don't know. My brain's not churning too much this morning. I need more caffeine, is what it is. But remember me doing a video or two on the social credit score in China. And I was telling people, if you've been here for a long time, maybe you remember it. I'm saying at some point we're going to see this in Europe. At some point we're going to see this here in North America. And people said, this will never fly here in the United States of America, land of the free. Well, we don't seem too free right now. Europe is getting ready to fall for the same social credit system, if you will. They're just being more nice about it and less communist about it, but to the same effect. They are saying that this is an optional ID program, which sounds great. You know, I love optional stuff. Like, again, Christmas, it's optional. You don't like it, don't celebrate it. But don't hate on me, son. I'm not going down that rabbit hole again, but it is what it is. Optional stuff is a beautiful thing. Herein lies the problem with the EID. Right now, Bama Jen and Big T are triggered because they have dealt with some trollish stuff this week. Here's the problem with this optional ID. Without one, you're not going to be able to buy, sell, and trade. You're not going to be able to walk into a store and use the currency of that moment without one of these things. Why? Because all of the stores are going to have an EID and they're going to be tied into the system. And if you're not tied into the system, you can't buy, sell, and trade. It is what it is on that. Maybe you can get around it by bartering, but it will be a headache. I promise you that. You can't visit the doctor. Once this thing kicks off, your doctor, again, this thing is going to have your medical records on it. And your doctors, your emergency rooms, all these people are going to require this optional ID in order to get medical services done, dentists and things like this. Okay. Chiropractors, which I probably need to go visit sometime soon. You can't drive without one because, again, digital driver's license are going to become the norm on this. And once that happens, officers are going to want that. They're going to require a digital driver's license. Well, if you're not tied into the system, you're driving without a license, so to speak. You see what's happening? That you see how they're trimming the fat, if you will. They're trimming people like us out of the equation, or they're forcing compliance. You can't get credit for housing. How can you go to a bank and get a loan if you're not tied into the system? If it's an apartment, most apartments, at least decent ones, have credit checks. How can you pass the credit check if you're not tied into the system? You cannot exist on the internet. Social media will be gone for you if you're not tied in because, again, the EU is going to force people to prove who they are online, right? Which is one of the reasons they began pitching this and, again, the whiskey shot. But how can you prove it if you're not tied into the system? The only way to prove, hey, it's me, I'm jumping on, whatever, Twitter, X, whatever, is to scan this thing. You understand what I'm saying? So you're forced to join in order to live within this society that they're creating. They're calling it optional. I mean, if you want to be a caveman or a cave woman and live completely outside of society, okay, I guess in that case it's optional. But you better hope that you can grow your own food. You better hope that you can create your own shelter. You see what I'm saying? You're not going to be able to do anything that you do right now. Go to the movies, go out to eat, go on vacation. I mean, this thing is a nightmare. And of course, on top of all of this, the EU and your own federal government, if you're in the United States, once it catches on here, and I promise you it will, it'll take some time, it'll be under a different name. But they're setting North America up, for those that don't know, to be very much like the EU. The North American Union or something, I think is what they've pitched already. They're signing your rights away, but I digress. The EU will have access to everything, your own government at some point, your location, where you're at all times. Because believe me when I tell you this, okay? If if you have to download this onto a smart device, and you do, that's a requirement by the EU. Don't worry. If you don't have a smartphone, they will give you one. You'll get a smart device slash Obama phone, as many of you have called it. But they're doing this because they want to know where you're at. They're going to track your movements at all times. Your on everything that you do online will be tracked by the government. Everything. Your spending habits. If you go to Food Line, all right, and this we can get into the problematics here in a minute, but if you go to Food Line, you spend 150 bucks, which is like a half a bag of groceries right now, son. They're going to know exactly what you spend it on. They're going to be able to figure out your habits very, very fast, especially when AI gets involved. And I promise you, they're going to tie AI into this. Why would they not? Your online activity, period. Whether you're on Amazon, whether you're on Google, whether you're on BitChute. I know a lot of people go to BitChute to avoid the commie stuff. Look, man, they're going to be able to track everything. Herein lies the problem for us, okay? They're pitching it as convenient because they always do, and a lot of people will eat that up. People are about convenience. It makes me sick. We've lost so many rights to convenience, but I digress. I'm going to give you a couple of examples, maybe that will put this into perspective, okay? Everything's tied into a QR code or to an application that's on your smart device. Remember, a while back when GoFundMe was going after conservatives. Do you remember that when somebody would have a conservative website up on GoFundMe trying to raise money for a conservative effort? And GoFundMe just stepped in and said, you know what? No, this is our platform. We're not going to allow it. I'll give you another example. Our friend Alex Jones. Remember how his banking services just decided one day, we don't like your message. We're going to drop you from our payment systems because at the end of the day, there are payment systems in European, and we don't agree with what you have to say. This is the problem. We're already seeing it to a degree. Again, to you land of the free, home of the bravers out there, we're probably the freest, but those freedoms are slipping away, I would argue. We see it every day when we get online. Yesterday, we did a video here on YouTube and it got slapped with context at the bottom, explaining to people what the theory was. Uh, like we're 3 years old, like we don't understand what the theory is, right? We deal with censorship all of the time. How many comments a day do I see here at Prepper Nation? Man, I couldn't find the channel. Man, I was unsubscribed. Man, I'm in Facebook jail for 2 weeks. This sort of thing. We're already dealing with that kind of stuff. And the same people that are censoring you online right now would be in charge of your medical records. They would be in charge of your banking. They would be in charge of your entire existence, your ability to buy, sell, and trade. So getting back to the problematic stuff for a minute, you go to Food Line, you spend $150, you buy steak. Okay. There's going to come a point in time where if you go back next week and you try and buy $150 worth of steak, this thing could potentially flag you and said, you know what, you've capped out for the month. No more steak for you. We're going to have to decline this transaction. This is the issue. Um, it's like they're taking everything about you for you folks in Europe and pretty soon us folks here in North America. They're combining it all together, tying it with a bow, and they're going to control it with an iron fist. This is the social credit score that is coming. It's probably going to be called ESG here or something to that effect. Fed coin will probably be tied up in there somehow. It's the same scam. They're just putting different names on the currency. They're putting different names on the side hustle over here, the social credit. And the question is, what choice do we have? That's an excellent question. What choice do we have as everything switches over to the digital age? I mean, what are we supposed to do? Live without vital services, like going to the hospital if there's an emergency, going to, preventative care to doctor, being able to stop and get gas in a vehicle, because eventually gas stations are going to require this. Already now in the EU, it's starting to happen. What are you going to do? You going to go out and get your own, petroleum out of the ground and turn it into gasoline? A lot of people will say they'll hold out, and I appreciate you saying that. But listen, what are you going to do when it's time to retire and the government owes you money, or maybe you're already getting money from the government via retirement, and they require this in order for those payments to continue to come? What about people that are on Medicaid and food stamps? They're going to make you jump through this hoop in order to continue to get it, I assure you, because you're a citizen. Illegals, nah, probably not going to have to jump through this right away. What are we supposed to do? Live like it's the 1700s again? I laugh and say sometimes that we might have to live like we're Amish over here, but honestly, if we live outside of this system, that's exactly what it's going to look like. We'll be Amish in different clothes. We'll be speaking Beaverine, not Pennsylvania Dutch, but it's the same concept. It's you join society the way we tell you to join it, or we're done with you. They're going to cast us off like we're homeless or something like that. These people are and have been for a very, very long time playing the long game. And again, they're tying it up now. It seems like they're starting to tie things up with the bow. It almost feels like speculatory on my part, but it almost feels like the pandemic. Oh, that was a huge deal, but that was just a little bit of the plan. That was just one of the loops, one of the loops of the bow that they're tying it up with. And the current wars that we have going on, just another couple of loops. Eventually, they're going to have this bow tied, folks. Um, Opponents in Europe, there are a lot of opponents of this because they understand what it is. They see it coming. Okay. They're asking people to resist at all costs. My question is, how do we do that? How do we do that? How are people in Europe going to resist this? Because it seems like the stores and the doctors and the movie theaters and the all of these vital services, these are the folks that need to resist it, but they're already signing up for it. So how does the common person resist this? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you this morning. I wish I did. If you have the answer, or if you want to add to the conversation, please leave a comment and let me know. I do go through and read every single comment here at Prepper Nation. Again, maybe shoot your thumb up or down on the way out the door and hit subscribe. Y'all take care. God bless.